Hey friends, this is Sean Washburn from YourExcelTutor.com, and you're watching 30 Tips in 30 Days. And today's tip I'm really excited about because we're going to walk you through your first macro. And if you've never done macros before, this is going to unlock a whole new world for you. And the goal of this video is for you to be able to follow these same steps and just make your first one. And I feel like if you make your first one, then you can play around with that. There's a whole new world there where you can learn, and for me that's what unlocked so much for me years and years ago to allow me to automate things and almost create software with Excel, this program that's sitting right on your desktop. So yeah, I just want to be your guide today, walk you through this, and would love to work with you after that, answer any questions and things like that. So to start, we're just going to make we're going to make a new file. So we go here to new, a blank one, and I'm going to assume that you don't have the developer tab listed. So the next step is we're going to go up here, right click in the ribbon, do customize ribbon, come down here and click this developer tab, because what that's going to do, that's going to add a new, well, it's already down here, but it's going to make it easier for you to work with macros. So click in developer tab, go up here, and there's this record macro button. So we'll click record macro. We're just going to call it, you can't have any spaces in there, so I'll say I like to put mine in uppercase, so I'll say my first macro. And if you don't name it now, it's no big deal. You'll be able to find it and you can name it later. And we'll leave this stuff blank. We'll hit OK. So now you see this change to say stop recording. So it's recording everything, not necessarily me moving the cursor around like this, but anything that I would change. So if I change this width of this column, and then let's type in something like this is our text, and let's just start with that. That'll be simple enough. So we'll say stop. Okay, so now it recorded that macro, and you're thinking, so where did it store it? So that's where this Visual Basic button is for. You click this, and if you saw in an earlier tip, we kind of looked in this back end to see what's on the back side, and this is going to take us there too. So we'll click Visual Basic, and it pops this whole thing up, and we're going to go down to so we're in book 4, and you'll see this thing called modules. And if you didn't make a macro already, you want to make one from scratch, what you would do is come in here, select your workbook, and then click down there and go module like that. It would create the same thing. Modules is just where it keeps the macros that it records. So a macro is just a program. It's really just a set of instructions that you're giving it. In this case it's recording it, and then if you play the macro, it's going to go through these same steps and recreate the thing you just did. So we're going to play around with that a little bit. So the first thing, so that's just, you can see where it is there. You go to the module, here's that macro that you made, there's what you did, you changed the column width, we added this text, and then it just is selecting that one cell that we're already in. So if we go back to the front end, which if you go down, you can toggle or whatever, go back to your main Excel, go down there to view, go to main Excel. So now we're back here. So let's just do a test here. So let's delete this, and we're going to drag this guy again. And instead of going, one way we could do this, we could click macros, and we could run it from here. But we're going to add one more step to this, which is adding a button. So you can actually run macros from anything. You can, like, if you want to, you can go here to insert. I do this sometimes, and I'll do like a shape. Really could be any shape you want, and you can just go like that, and then if you right click on it, there's an option down here to assign a macro. So let's do that. So we created this shape, and that's going to be our button. So like I say, this could be anything like this, text, shapes, or if you go in the developer tab, there's actually things that look like buttons. So this one, if we click that, it's going to actually act like a button, so we could put that in there too. Now in this case, you can actually click, you'll see it actually looks like a button. This one doesn't doesn't do that when you click on it. So we're gonna click this. Now one thing you're gonna notice here is, watch, I click this and it stuck the text down here for some reason. So let's try it again. We'll click here, click the button, and that's one thing you'll notice. Okay, so right off, why didn't it put the text where we had it originally? Well, that's one thing about a macro, is it's going to try to see what you're doing, but it's not going to exactly match. So if we go to the back again, it just said active cell equals this is our text. So what that means is wherever we're at, so I can click and drag this down here, wherever we're clicked, so if we click here and run the macro, that's where it's going to put the text. If we click here, run the macro, that's where it's going to put the text. So if we wanted to make sure that the text was going to be an A, we'd either need to, or an A1, we need to either go there and click it, or we need to change the macro. And this is, we're not going to cover everything. This is just a tip of the iceberg for macros, but I will show you this. So what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this, and instead we're going to do this thing called range. So we're going to say range A1. That's basically telling it, when you say that, that's selecting this cell. So we're saying selecting that cell. We say what we want to happen there. We want the value of that cell to be, this is our text. Okay, so now instead of it being the active cell like it just did before, now when we run this, it's going to go straight to that A1 cell. So let's delete all these. Now when I click this, doesn't matter where I have selected, it's going to still put that in that cell. Okay, so that's super simple first macro, but that's kind of an example of what it can do. And you know, the best way to start getting into macros is to do recording and then go back and see what it did and then play around with it. You know, maybe make a button out here and then click the button and see if it did, you know, what it was supposed to do. And then the other thing you can do is just play around with it. So like, you know, change the text to say something else, or change it to be a different cell. So like A3, and then say this is, you know, second text. So now we just totally changed the whole macro. We could also have just copied and pasted a new one down here. But what that's going to do, now we come here and click this, now it already changed it. So again, the best way to do it is follow these steps to create it. To do your record, just record some simple things. It can be whatever you want, putting text in, moving things around, and then go back in the back end and see how it translated that, because that's what it is. It is really a translation. It's recording what it needs, information it needs to accomplish what you just did. So try that out. You know, record, do a little testing in here, and maybe we'll do one more tip along these lines that'll build on this, just to show you some things you can do with that. And the final thing we need to do though is we haven't saved this, so we're going to go save it just to show you what you need to do here. So we'll do save as. We're going to go to computer, browse, and we're just going to go to the desktop. And here's the key: is we want to say Excel workbook down here. We want to change that to be XLSM, so it says macro enabled workbook. And then we'll just call this, you know, my first macro file. Okay, so we do that, click save, it's out there. Now you notice it added that extension on the file name. That means that I can actually run macros in there. If you didn't save it like that, it would not let you run the macro, even though you would just recorded it. It's kind of weird that way, but it doesn't know what kind of file it is until you save it. So again, first macro, I'd love for you to try that out on your own. Let me know if you run into any issues, and you can message me or comment, whatever. And I hope though that that'll be a building block, and you can start to kind of get to know how to use these, and that the curtain will be kind of pulled back a little bit for that, because I think there's a lot of power in that once you get to use these. So hope you enjoyed that tip, and check in tomorrow for another one.